Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Piqua City Schools Board of Education. It is Thursday, June 22nd. Mr. Hiddle, can you please call roll?
Mr. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Frazier.
Here.
Mr. Bostic.
Here.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
Mrs. McMacken.
Here. And if everyone can please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, after reviewing the minutes from last month's meeting, if there are no changes to be made, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion approved. And same for our agenda. If there are no questions or changes to be made, can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Our agenda is now approved. Mr. Bostic, do you have an Upper Valley Career Center update?
No, we have a meeting Monday, so.
Okay. Nothing yet.
No, they're just, I know they're redoing the back parking lot, but I really don't know where that's at right now. We'll find out tomorrow night.
Okay. They've already started that?
Yes, yeah, they have.
Okay. No one here from the public for agenda items, so we'll move on to our treasurer's agenda with Mr. Hiddle.
All right, the financial reports were attached. Does anybody have any questions? The next thing we have this evening is the property and liability insurance renewal. This year, there was an overall increase of 7.5% or $8,105 in our property coverage, and a lot of that is due to the fact that the property values were increased by 5%. So our buildings are now covered from almost $150 million in totality. But we were able to save some money because there's cyber coverage, because of everything that we've been doing in the district to prevent any kind of cyber attack on the district. We were able to lower that by $4,147. So when you take that out, we're about 3.3% increase in totality. So not bad doing the amount stuff is costing to replace these days. Because we also increased what our bus coverage was to 110,000. It was at 98,000. So new buses are through the roof and not coming down anytime soon. So that is the renewal for that. The next item on there is recommending the appropriation adjustments for the end of fiscal year 23. Then that's what I do to close up the fiscal year. And then the next item is to start the next fiscal year at 50% of what we had spent in the previous year. The next item is to invest, allow me to invest our funds for FY24. Item 6 is to establish for FY24 the $30,000 for the board's service fund, and we use that for things like OSBA, staff gifts, for retirements and those kind of things. Recommend board approval of the mileage plan for the 23-24 school year for our staff that travels in between buildings and through the district. Instead of doing turning in all the mileage all the time, we've come up with stipend amounts for that, and that's something that we've done in the past few years. The item number 8 is a fund-to-fund transfer of not to exceed $1.5 million to put into the permanent improvement account to continue with ongoing district renovation and construction projects. And item number 9 is to approve the salary schedules for staff working on our behalf through the Miami County ESC. And so this salary schedule is 4.5% less than what we pay because there's a 4.5% administrative fee. So the people who work for us through the ESC basically make about the same exact amount minus the administration fee. And again, that's because of certain ways that they have to be hired because of the grant or because they're not a long-term position, it's a temporary position. Are there any questions? I know I blew through a lot of things, but they're all normal, usual. Okay, that's all I've got.
So how does that work then? Do we pay the ESC or their pay comes?
The ESC pays those people who are ESC employees.
But we pay them?
We pay them. Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they get paid through the state foundation, which is the money that comes from the state every month. And so they do our MD units, for example. So that money comes out of a deduct that goes directly to the ESC.
Okay.
Any other questions? That's a good one. $3.2 million goes to Miami County ESC.
It's a big chunk. Okay.
It's for special education.
Is it?
Because we have quite a few from the ESC for the Elevate program, or is that
That's
incorrect?
another whole program.
Okay.
So that's another.
A different-
We're almost up to $1 million in totality for that entire program too, so but that's a different.
Many times districts will go together with ESC and purchase services for a teacher for limited number of qualifications. For example, not every district has a blind student. So rather than each district hiring a teacher to work with blind students, we'll all get together in the county, hire one teacher at the ESC, and then we'll all pay into that service. And then that teacher can work with blind students in all the districts, which saves the districts money but provides the service that they need. So a lot of it happens from that area.
And there's supervision that has to happen, so then you have to be licensed or whatever in a lot of areas for speech or hearing or whatever, and so they have the supervisors for that as well, because otherwise that's like, you'd have to have the superintendent of every building kind of thing. Which I think
Gifted services fall under that. You have to be specially certified in gifted services to be able to provide that service, plus there has to be an administrator for that. So
Makes sense. It's beneficial. Okay, if no other questions, can I get a motion to approve the treasurer's agenda?
So moved. Second?
Okay, Mr. Hiddle, please call roll.
Mr. Frazier,
Aye.
Mr. Bostic,
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Ford,
Aye.
Mrs. McMacken.
Aye. The treasurer's agenda is now approved. Moving on to Mr. Thompson and the superintendent's report.
thank you. I'd like to introduce our new student rep this year. Braden Holtvogt was actually applied along with 6 other students to be our student rep. And the board members each read through those anonymously. We took the names off. You read through those back in May, selected who you thought had the best application, and Braden was selected. So Braden, would you mind giving a little introduction about yourself? Tell us what you do in high school and why you're excited about working with us this year.
Braden Holtvogt. I've gone to Piqua City Schools since I was in first grade. I run cross country, swim for the swim team, and then run track in the spring. I'm excited to see the ins and outs of how it works, of how the school district works, and how all the decisions are being made, and very excited.
All right, very good.
Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. Yeah. Anybody have any questions or any words
He's
of wisdom?
a great kid. I mean, we got a really good one. So, very excited for him.
Very good. Yeah. All the applications were amazing, really.
They
I thought
were.
I said earlier, any student could have been chosen from there, and they would have been fantastic. So,
I think it's great we had that many applicants.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the most we've had
Yeah.
for the position in the last 3 years that we've had this. So, real excited. So, welcome. We are going to be adopting new math curriculum K through 12, and Teresa Anderson and Scott Bloom, our curriculum directors, have been working on that process all year long with staff and involving them in the process. So I thought they could come up and give a quick introduction on this before we do any official adoption with your vote later.
Good evening. Just thought I'd share briefly the process that we followed so that you're aware of how we came to the decisions that we came to make the recommendations for the adoptions. Ohio Department of Education came out with a whole resource on adopting high-quality instructional materials. So Mr. Bloom and I went through that and went through lots of different resources and ideas that they had and created a plan for which of those made sense for our district. It was their plan is quite cumbersome, and we couldn't have never done all the steps that they recommend, just because it would have taken 2 years and lots of teacher time to do every single thing that they recommend. So we pared it down to what was reasonable for us. At the primary and intermediate level, we surveyed the teachers, took all of their input, and created a rubric as a result of that. And so I think I shared that with you in a file. So it was a pretty lengthy rubric in terms of everything that we were looking for in the resources. We had teachers nominate themselves or others to be part of a committee. That committee then reviewed a number of different products. All of the products that we looked at were highly rated in ed reports, so we made sure we went through that process as well. They narrowed it down, and then we used the rubric to evaluate the resources that we had narrowed it down to, and then selected our top program as a result of the process that we had gone through. We had representatives from every grade level, as well as our mathematic coaches as part of the teams to evaluate the resources. In the end, the committee made a recommendation to adopt Envision math program. There were several key components of that program that really sold the committee. The assessment piece was one of it. It was very good on assessing students, and as a result of those assessments, having very specific resources for intervention or enrichment based on how students performed. The teachers felt that it was a very teacher-friendly resource, easy for them to manage, had lots of things for them, but not so overwhelming. The ongoing PD was embedded in the program, so for every lesson in the math program, there's a video that a teacher can watch on how to teach it and what's the best way to do it. So if there was anything that they needed, if you asked me to go in and sub and teach some 6th grade math skills, I would probably need to brush up a little bit on a couple of things. And so you could watch a quick video and feel confident that you knew how to teach that as in line with the program and its processes for teaching. And then the other thing that really sold them were lots of opportunities for students to practice and gain automaticity in their skills, and really nice parent resources as well. So those were kind of the key things that tipped the scale towards this program.
Good evening. Very similar process. One of the differences was we had all math teachers grades 7 through 12 on that committee. We didn't have a select group. So the math teachers there were able to work together, which was a really nice way for them to look at that, because they were able to look at the way that those skills work vertically as they go from grade 7 up and have those discussions. The math programs that we've selected, as with Envision, were highly rated in Ed Reports. And just as an aside, Ed Reports is a nonpartisan, non-commercial entity that reviews learning programs, typically ELA and math. They're heavy in those. And the Ohio Materials Matters program uses Ed Reports as their clearinghouse for effective programming. So the 2 programs that we selected for grades 7 and 8 and then 9 through 12 both met all of the factors in Ed Reports. In fact, they couldn't be rated any higher than they are right there. And that was one of the key things that we looked at, is does this meet what it says it's going to meet, and will it do what it's going to do? The 2 programs we are going to go with in 7 and 8 and Algebra 1 in the junior high is a program called Desmos. Desmos is based around the illustrative math learning framework. A lot of that is based on what we would have called when I went to school, word problems, but really it is problem-based, real-world application of mathematics, hence the term illustrative. It illustrates how this math is working. For the high school, and that would be Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, we will go with just illustrative. The nice part there, 2 different publishers, same framework. So as students move from 7 to 8 to Algebra to Geometry to Algebra 2, the framework, the verbiage, the process is not changing. So we have that continuity. What we were trying to avoid was relearning how we do this every year when we go to a different math class, and we won't have that. We'll have that ability to have the same process throughout. The teachers went through this. We spent the better part of the year going through this. We practiced with it. We piloted it in a couple of classrooms to see which ones were working the best with the students, and those were the 2 that the teacher teams felt best fit our needs. So we're very excited to get started. As with Envision, professional development will start as soon as the teachers come back, and it will be embedded throughout the year. We have touch points with both of those publishers where they will come in and support us, but there's professional development built into those programs. That was a key factor when we made that decision. So, thank you. Any questions for us? It is an arduous process. As Teresa said, if you followed the state model, it would take years. So everything we did was based on that. We just pulled the pieces that had the most impact for our teachers, and they were able to get through that.
So it's going to start at the beginning of the year.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And why were we finding that what we were using before wasn't producing good results? Why are we adopting something new?
Well, I'll let Teresa go after I go in. I will tell you for 7-12, we were not consistent from grade to grade or even classroom to classroom. We were using quality materials. They weren't aligned really well with each other. A number of them were purchased before state standards changed, so we were forced to really make a lot of maneuvering with that. We really wanted to be unified in the approach that we used with our students in all of those grade bands. Adopting a new set of materials and programming allows us to do that and then set that level for all of those teachers and students at one time so that we are consistent when we talk about math every time the students move to a new grade level or a new content area.
At the elementary level, we did look at the data since the time that we had previously adopted Eureka up until now, and it did not show a great positive trend line, and so we felt that that was one component, but also we've been using that program for a number of years, and we were having issues with fidelity of implementation, having all of the resources that we needed without teachers having to supplement with a lot of other resources. And once teachers start supplementing with other resources, you lose consistency. And that impacts students when they have inconsistency from grade level to grade level in resources. So,
Will there be something for parents, when kids take work home, something for them to look over like the teachers have?
yes, there is actually a parent component that you don't even have to have Wi-Fi for. That parents can download an app on their phone, and for every lesson, there's a quick tutorial that a parent can tap onto and see to get help, which again was one of the selling features that the teachers liked, was the parent resources.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate their work as well as the teachers and the administrators. I mean, they spend a lot of time in and out of school hours, and just great work. So lengthy process for sure. Thank you. That's it for my report.
Okay. Thank you. So you can proceed with your agenda.
Sure. Recommend board approval of the attached list of additional students for issuance of diploma at Piqua High School dated May 26 of 23. We had one student that completed what they needed to have to get their diploma after we did the approval at the last meeting in May. So we want to officially approve that student. Recommend board approval of the attached list of donations and grants at the Piqua City School District. So we had a number of donations that came in for the Indian Nation Station, for the golf outing. We really appreciate the support for that. That helps keep that program going strong. Transform Life Church donated some school fee funds for a student. We appreciate that. And a number of grants came through from the Miami County Foundation, Piqua Community Foundation, the Paul G. Duke Foundation, Teachers Honoring Teachers, which is through the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, as well as the Music Theater International. And a great tribute to our staff for all the applications that they filled out to try to secure funds for special programs that they want to do. Recommend board approval of the overnight field trip to the Eastern Ohio basketball camp for the Piqua High School girls basketball team. I sent you that earlier. It was between board meetings, so I went ahead and approved that as I'm authorized to do, and then we'll officially approve that tonight. I recommend board approval of the attached list of equipment for buses 2, 13, and 25 for disposal and removal from the inventory of the Piqua City School District. Those have been sold as they moved out of our inventory. Recommend board approval of the attached list of library books from the Piqua Junior High School for disposal and removal from inventory of Piqua City School District. And recommend the board approval of the attached list of library books from Spring Creek Elementary for disposal and removal from the inventory of the Piqua City School District. Outdated books, no longer being checked out, wear and tear, etc. Recommend board approval of the adoption of the Imagine Learning illustrative mathematics for grades 9 through 12. Recommend board adoption for the Desmos Mathematics for grades 7 through 8, and recommend board approval of the adoption of Envision Mathematics for K through 6, as they just described. And finally, recommend the board approval of Carolyn Pearson for the appointment to the Piqua Public Library Board of Trustees, effective immediately to fulfill the unexpected term of Nate Funderburg. This appointment will expire on December 31st, 2023. So the Piqua Public Library has their own board that manages all their functions, but we approve those board members as they appoint. So
2023 or
it's a 7-year term.
That's a 2030. Okay.
2030. Did I say that wrong?
I said 2020. I was making sure. I didn't.
2030.
That is a
Sorry.
long term. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long term. So if I misread that, sorry. But 2020,
Puts my sentence to a new term, because you get on that board, you can't get off of it.
I know. yeah, Teresa knows too. It's a good board though, good work. So, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, can I get a motion to approve the superintendent's agenda?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent's agenda is approved.
Thank you.
Mr. Lyons?
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, I think I mentioned at the last meeting that transportation was going to do a job fair on the 3rd of June, and they did that, and we had an incredible turnout. We were kind of worried, is anybody going to show up? We actually had 13 people come and go through each station, and so it took all morning to get everybody through. But the best part was we had 19 drivers that came to help and teach people about what that looks like. And then we had 9 people show up last night for the civil service from that group to take the test. And here's the even better part, they all passed it. So we have 9 people right now that have to go to that next step of getting their CDO passenger permit and then starting to train with us. So we're excited about that process, and it sounds like we may start doing job fairs for a lot of our classified positions in the future. So if we get those results. So congratulations to them for putting that on and getting a great result. Outside of that, are there any questions on the update? Personnel update? And if there are none, I would like to introduce our new principal for Washington Primary School, Heather Kale. After a extensive process of going through selection and introducing and meeting a lot of people and answering a lot of questions, we were fortunate enough to have her agree to come and bring her expertise with her. So if you'd like to come on up to the mic and introduce yourself.
Tony said, I'm Heather Kale. I have been in education for 29 years. Started my career here in Miami County at Milton Union Elementary, where I've taught and was assistant principal, and then spent 10 years in Northridge Local as elementary principal and then director of curriculum, and then spent the last 6 years at Montgomery County ESC doing a whole variety of things for that educational service center. Talked to my boss a couple of years ago and said, I really want to go back to being a principal. That's been my favorite role in all that I've done in education. And so I was really excited when I saw this posting and jumped in and very pleased to be here. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Questions for Heather?
Good luck. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Where did you say you live now?
Right now I live in Arcanum, but
Arcanum, okay.
my fiance Troy and I are planning to move to Piqua. So we've
That's exciting.
already done some searching here. So
Great.
Welcome to you too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Heather.
We're excited to
She's
have
very,
you.
she's very humble in her approach to things, as you can tell. But she does not only bring the experience, but the expertise with that experience as well. We were blessed to be able to have her at our retreat days, administrative retreat days, and got to see a little bit of that begin to prepare for Washington out of the gate with Shannon, and excited to have her on board. So it's going to be a great addition to the team. Outside of that, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the personnel agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, Mr. Hiddle, please call roll.
Mr. Bostic.
Yes.
Mr. Ford.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Frazier. Mrs. McMacken.
Aye. Motion carries and the personnel agenda is approved. So no one to speak on non-agenda items.
Skip an item.
Oh, I did because we moved it. I'm so sorry. Okay, so on to new business.
We're going to do the first reading of the revisions for the Piqua City School Random Drug Testing Policy 2431.02. If you look at what I passed out to you, on the front page, you'll see like a light gray area. Do you see that on that first paragraph? One of the changes we made was the old policy just said alcohol and drugs. And we wanted to specify that it actually does test alcohol, nicotine, and illicit drugs. It specifically says that later in the policy, but anywhere in the policy where it lists those, we made sure we listed all three rather than just saying alcohol and drugs. So that's a minor change. Go to page 3 under random testing. The old policy specifically listed the first company that we used for testing, so they were referenced all throughout, and we took the reference of their name out because we switched over to Premier Health. So anywhere where that company was listed, we just replaced it with approved district vendor. That way, if we ever have to change again, it's just a vendor rather than a specific vendor. On number 5, where it says if a positive test occurs, on step 1, if a student tests positive the first time, there was nothing in the policy that indicated that they would come back to a negative test. So they had to go seek some kind of counseling. They had to go through some process where they took some kind of a course to help them get off of the nicotine or alcohol or whatever they tested positive for. But there was nothing that indicated they would come back with a negative test. Steps 2 and 3 did do that. So we would like to add that after step 1, if you test positive, you're already going to go see some counselor. We would like to have it where the student has to come back with a negative test. And our hopes would be, since they're going to see that counselor, that they would start that process and immediately we would see those results. And the last thing, if you turn the page under practices, we added this section. What we were finding was if a student tested positive in the spring and they were going to be out for either 10 or 40%, as the policy indicated, if they missed the summer conditioning for football, for example, you can't just jump into that season then without having those practices or that conditioning. So we had to try to find a way to make sure that student had those opportunities built in without being penalized. So what this says is you can go to practices provided that you do the monthly random testing over the summer months, and you're either reducing your number or you're at a 0 for testing positive. So we want the kid to be safe. So if they test positive in the spring, we want a reduced number or we want a 0 throughout the summer months. You can practice in order to stay in conditioning, and then it has to continue to be either, like I said, a drop or a 0. That way the kid doesn't miss a whole season because they didn't get to do the conditioning or participate in summer practices. that make sense?
So if it comes back the same,
If it comes back and they're positive or the number grows, they go right into number one. Yeah.
okay, what's the average rate that they should reduce at? Is there such a thing?
Depends on the amount of usage that they had from the initial test.
But each time will have to be reduced.
Correct. And there will be a month lapse between each testing, so it will show a reduction if they have made that true effort. Yeah. Typically, if a kid has gone a month without it, they can pretty much get down to pretty close to a zero number of negative tests. Yeah. This just gives the kid another chance to maintain the program, because like I said, if you know, football, you can't miss all your conditioning and practices and then just jump into the season and go into game 2. You have to have that chance to be able to build that. But we want the kid to be, you know, drug-free, nicotine-free, etc., to have safe practices. So this would allow the student to have those practices over the summer months, provided they participate in the random testing and their number reduces or it's at a 0 level.
But regardless, still, at the end of conditioning or whatever, when they go back into the sport,
Has to
it
be
has
negative.
to be negative.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
If their first test, say they get busted in the spring, and they come back and their first test is a 0, are they still subject to random testing the rest of the summer?
Correct.
So if
Yep.
it comes back higher again, then they start the process all over again?
Correct. Yep.
Seems reasonable.
Okay. Questions?
Well, just, okay, so if they, first month it goes down, second month it goes up,
Then that
they still will participate?
they would go to
then-
step 2.
So they will miss that mid
They would
point,
go to
and
s-
then it has to come back down.
They would go to the second violation
Okay.
if they did that. Yeah. And then they would follow what the second violation outlines. There was no changes in that. Yeah, it's meant to give the kid the opportunity to have practices over the summer.
And come back.
But to do that, we want safe practices. So we want to make sure there's either a reduction all the way down to 0 over that time period,
And you can only test once a month?
once a month. And it still would be random over the summer months.
So over the summer months, there's only a chance you get tested if you test positive in the spring?
Say that again.
So if you test positive in the spring, and you have the random drug tests over the summer months,
Uh-huh.
there's only a chance you'll get selected during the summer months?
No, you would participate in it.
Okay.
Yep, it's not by chance. You're agreeing to go into the random testing policy over the summer months in order to go to practice.
Okay.
Otherwise, what would have happened is the student would have tested positive in the spring. They would have just been out either 10% or 40%, whatever they would have selected, and they would not have had the chance to practice. So if it were football or some sport, cross country, where they need to do the conditioning, they would just be out of that until their 10% or 40% time was up. And if that's the case, and you're a football or even cross country, you can't just jump into that sport and all of a sudden you're physically fit and ready to go. It's not safe for the student to do that either. That make sense? Any questions on that? Everything else is pretty much the same.
I mean, on the same token, it's also a good kind of a push to not do this.
Correct.
Because you would lose your season. I mean,
Correct.
now we're saying you can do it, but you're still gonna practice. Whereas you say, listen, if you do it,
Yep.
you're done. You know, and you would have to practice on your own.
Good motivation.
It's a great motivation. So
Yeah.
I can see not accepting this, and then I can also see it's kind of a double-edged sword for.
Yeah. And we always tell students the greatest thing about this is when you're in a sport or an activity like marching band or show choir, you have the ability to say to people that might be peer pressuring you, I'm not doing that because I want to stay in these activities. It's a great out from that peer pressure. You know, if you're actively engaged and you want to be in it, you're not going to do it. And hopefully friends don't pressure then. Any other questions? All right, that's a first read, and we'll go to the second read at the next board meeting then.
Okay, so no vote. Correct.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah?
Okay. So our next regular board meeting will be Monday, July 17th. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries and this meeting is adjourned.